All right, what is up, everyone? We're talking some MLB for Tuesday, September 25th. EMAC is joining me. This will be a two-man show for the most part. It'll be myself and EMAC on Monday and Wednesday for MLB. So we wanted to get a couple shows under our belt. EMAC, how you doing on this night? And what do you think of this slate so far? Pitchers especially.
Well, I think it's going to be a good one thus far, and I'm glad I'm cruising in here with the final week of the season. Let you do all the heavy lifting for the last month, and I'm going to come in here so we can do our victory lap as we finish up the regular season. But yeah, it looks like an intriguing slate. Now, this is one of those where we're going to all have to think about it. You're going to want to be careful with some of the listed pitchers are changing and such. And things will change. Like the Yankees, for example, diving right in, they've got a few different people listed on different sites. I've seen Severino, I've seen Tanaka. They've even said, yeah, we're not sure what it's going to be. At one point, Sonny Gray was listed as a pitcher for Monday. It's been an interesting one. So they're just going to line up their playoff roster. They, of course, clinched against Baltimore the other night. So just be careful. And, of course, we're going the night before. So if there are a few changes, not to fear, you're going to get some shows throughout the day. You're going to have plenty of premium content, projections, and all the good stuff behind the paywall covering those actual pitchers that are for sure locked in. It also seems like we're getting a bunch more openers these days, Jake.
Yeah, Tampa Bay starting quite the trend. They've had a lot of success doing that, so I think it's pretty cool. You've seen that all in one year, just the shift from like what seemed like a pretty radical idea, but like Tampa had success. They had a season that they probably shouldn't have had, and that's definitely due to this new opener middle reliever thing that they've so smartly done. So I don't know. What do you think of that? I guess we haven't really talked about that. We can talk about that for a minute or two.
Yeah, I was actually I didn't know what to think before, so I've been doing fantasy baseball. This was this will be my 30th year of fantasy NBA. This was my 29th year of fantasy baseball. So I've seen it from literally the Stone Ages or the days of pen and paper all the way up through now. So the funny thing about the end of the season is it used to always be a point of pride that they would have the starters mapped out and there wasn't as much gamesmanship, if you will, or what seems like gamesmanship. I think it's actually a smart idea. Go with the fresher arms, go fewer innings, and be able to throw harder, particularly when you're wanting to look at some of these younger, talented guys. I think it's solid. Do know that you also, in addition to wanting to know where the playoff picture is, you want to know what people are looking at for various milestones. So if you're like, say, a Max Scherzer, and you have a shot at yet another Cy Young, a third Cy Young, and 300 strikeouts, there's a good chance not only will we see him go Tuesday, he could go Sunday on the last day of the season, even though the Nationals have been eliminated. So you need to know what other milestones are available or team records, etc.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. So we'll try to brush by those as we go, and I'm sure the other shows will, Adam and Laffy and Josh and Chris will all be on top of that as well. But definitely something to keep in mind, I think. For this Tuesday slate specifically, let's just start with the top tier. And again, we're going to focus mostly on pitchers. EMAC and myself both like to kind of do some deeper dives into pitchers, and I think it's smart because that's the pitcher touches the ball every play. So it's kind of like the QB in football, everything's got to go through them, and that's kind of how I think both of us start our research with who to play. Who's okay to take hitters against, who's guys that we really want to stack against. So looking at this upper tier, you mentioned Max Scherzer already. You're expecting him to be full go against the Nationals, 12-8 on DraftKings. You're expecting a full start and just classic Max, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. This will be the fifth time he has faced the Marlins. He's got 25 strikeouts through 27 innings. That feels like he's slipping just a little bit when you compare his season-long total of 290 strikeouts in 213 and two-thirds innings. He has a chance to be the first pitcher, I want to say, let's go back to that blurb courtesy of MLB Baseball. He will become the first or the fifth pitcher since 2000 with 300 strikeouts in a season. Now that used to be kind of the hallmark, but as starts have dwindled from 36 to 33 to 30-ish per year, it's been harder and harder for pitchers to meet that milestone. You think of like Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, guys like that that have been up there. Nolan Ryan before your time, well before your time. But Scherzer has a good chance of being there, and he's pitching out the last two starts of the season. Again, I think he'll go Sunday as well. He is just looking to set some Nationals records. We've seen them eliminated from the playoffs, as I mentioned, but Bryce Harper has 125 walks on the season. That was a team record, and Trey Turner just set the team record for steals in his last game. So they're playing for personal milestones. It's not like these guys are going to mail it in. They're on TV. They are getting paid oodles and gobs of money. So we know that they are going to be giving it their all. It's one thing to mail it in, in basketball. You really don't in football or baseball, because you can get hurt if you're not going all out or paying attention to everything. So we've got that. But he starts off the top of the page with his strikeout percentage. I'm still going all the way back to the beginning of last season, but he definitely is the guy with the 41% strikeout rate against righties, and then against lefties. Where is he there? He's got a 30% strikeout rate. Now those numbers are even higher when we just look at single season, but I just wanted to point out his dominance over the last few years.
Yeah, just an exceptional pitcher in every sense of the word. I mean, I have no hesitation about playing him here, especially now that you sort of drive it home saying that he's still pitching for something personally, even if the Nats aren't really playing. So I think Scherzer is both of our top options. I think that's pretty fair to say. And it's not all that interesting of a matchup. He strikes out righties at an insane clip. He strikes out lefties at an insane clip. And these Marlins don't really bring all that much power. So run prevention's been his only issue as of late, and by issue I mean like 2 and 3 runs. Like, he's not getting lit up or anything. So moving down a little bit, Buehler, Bauer, Syndergaard, I have some concerns with all of these guys. I think Bauer we can pretty much cross off. He only threw 31 pitches in his last start.
Agreed. I think their hope is to get him up to about 50 pitches and then use him as some sort of leverage situations in the playoffs is kind of what they're doing. So
he's not going to be full go for the playoffs?
I don't. Well, when I say full situations in the playoffs, if you've noticed, the teams have been, the last few years, the really revolutionary teams have really been only running out their starters for 4 or 5 innings tops and then going to the bullpens, because there's fresher arms and they can do some situational stuff. So I think even at his quote full go, I bet we don't see him go more than 4 innings in the playoffs. That's
okay. Yeah, I mean, 4 innings of this guy though. I mean, even if he's not full strength, he's just ridiculously good. Truly breakout season for Bauer. But I think for this slate, even against the White Sox, 10-4 is just too much on DraftKings. Buehler looks a little overpriced to me at 11-7. I know he's a very good real life pitcher. Maybe doesn't get like the plate discipline numbers that I would look for in an 11-7 pitcher. He's pitching in Arizona, not the same hitter's park as we've seen with the vaunted Humidor. And then you see Syndergaard down there for 10-2. Looks like kind of a trappy price. I don't know. What do you think of Buehler and Syndergaard here?
I have a little more interest in Buehler. My main reasoning being behind that is the Dodgers have not yet clinched a playoff spot. So they are, I'm just looking to see where they are. Okay, so they're ahead of the wild card, but they have not clinched because of the Rockies are just 1.5 games behind them. Now, here's the fun part. Here's the real tricky part. If the Rockies pass them, then it'll be the Dodgers that are behind the 8 ball in the wild card spot. So they don't have, neither of these teams really has a cushion. They need to, whichever wins the NL West is going to go. Whichever one of these teams falters, I doubt they're going to make the wild card unless they run the table this week. So there could be a longer leash for someone like Buehler, or at least a 5-inning leash. So that makes it a little bit interesting for me. Now, as you said, the Humidor is going to be open all week, all series in Arizona as they finish things out according to their schedule. That, of course, could change at any given time, but that is their current plan. With regards to Syndergaard, he just is not. I don't even want to click on him. He is getting his pitch count there, but his results have just been a mess, and it's been a lot of walk issues. I mean, he has 11 walks in his last 3 games. That's very uncharacteristic. He has just 16 strikeouts in those games. He's averaging 100 pitches through those games, so you're not getting shortchanged. But he's only topped 11 fantasy points once. Granted, it was a phenomenal showing against Boston with 28 DraftKings points, but the rest of the time he's been faltering outside of that monster. He laid down a monster, if you will, against San Francisco, against the Giants out there in AT&T Park. So I just don't want to go there. I would rather earmark my stuff for later. Yeah, the upside's there, but how often are we really going to see it? And, oh, yeah, he's facing Atlanta. That doesn't seem like a fun matchup, even if he gets a watered-down version of Atlanta.
Right, I'm kind of right there with you on Syndergaard. So 10-2 looks like a good price, but as you mentioned, the pitch count way up as of late. And you just look at like the DK box scores. I know it doesn't tell the whole story, but for the whole season, he's only topped 30 points a couple times. That 44-point outing that was ridiculous, complete game, and all that. But outside of that, like, he's been good, but not super elite. So I think the 10-2 price tag is warranted. And you talk about Atlanta, not a ton of strikeouts, and a lot of speed with Enciarte and Acuna at the top. And Syndergaard is one of the worst at holding runners. So he could get himself into trouble if he is walking guys like he has been lately.
Absolutely agreed. Now, if you want to get down a little bit lower, now I don't know for sure who's going to be going for the Yankees. It could be Tanaka. It could be Severino. Again, they have clinched the wild card. I don't believe they can really improve their lot that much. So whomever goes, I don't think we're going to see a super duper long start. I think this is everybody gets a get right turn as they go through the rotation, and they're going to need to set things up for that 1-game playoff. If we look down a little lower, we're going to see Chris Archer, who is still getting the pitches. They just haven't been as effective, but he's been doing better. I mean, he's got 16 strikeouts in his last 12 innings. That's his last 2 starts. It's been improving. I think he's someone, again, I've talked about on various platforms. Jake, I think we're going to be really excited for him next year. He'll have a whole offseason to recover, get all the dings taken care of, all the whatever tiredness it is. And then he's going to be not going against the AL East. He's going to be in Pittsburgh going against the pitcher instead of the DH. Sounds like a great spot for him. So I don't mind him at 8,800. I think he has more upside than Syndergaard, even in his shall we say, delicate condition. But the guy I want to talk about, and I'll turn it over to you, is Josh James. He is the youngster that is up for the Astros. He had 87 pitches in a glorious outing against Seattle. He went 5 1/3. Best part, he had 7 strikeouts, and they're a relatively stingy strikeout team. He went 87 pitches. His price has doubled. It's $8,000.
Wow.
We say on some of these where these feel a little more expensive. You know what? When you're kind of in the 8,000 range in September baseball, it's okay because we're going to get a cheap hitter or two, and that's going to make these 8,000 guys like low 7,000, high 6,000 guys, which is perfect. A little tougher to do that with the 5-figure guys, especially when they have question marks. But I think we can work out some lineups with Scherzer and potentially someone like Josh James in tournaments if you want to stack like a 7, 8, 9, 1 for one of the teams if they're in a good spot. Just going lower in that order, getting a little differentiation.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue he's a little bit overpriced based on one start, but that start was pretty dominant. I mean, 34% chase rate, 17.2% swinging strike rate against a team that, like you mentioned, EMAC, they just don't really strike out that much. And to go in there and do that, we weren't sure the pitch count. He was, I think, minimum salary. I got burned for not playing him. And now playing him for double the salary kind of makes me feel stupid. But, I mean, he could go 90-plus pitches here after throwing 87. I think that's pretty fair to say. And you're right about there's going to be value that opens up somewhere as we see teams roll out their B squad and C squad. So I don't think you're going to have to sacrifice too much for this $8,100 price tag. He's going to get a lot of righties here for the Blue Jays, assuming they roll out a normal lineup. And, yeah, you're kind of talking me into James a little bit. I mean, I kind of liked him, but this $8,100 was scaring me off. But I think I'm going to be there by the time we get to tomorrow morning.
There we go. Step over to the dark side with me, young fella. It'll be a party. I just was calling up something here with just to get back to the stolen bases. So, oh good God, do I have this filter? Oh, thank God. I thought for a second here I didn't have this filtered by team, but it was all New York Mets pitchers. Since the beginning of last season, in 42 starts, Mats has 37 stolen bases. In 30, Syndergaard has 34 stolen bases. In now DeGrom's not as bad because he's made 62 starts, but he's given up 32 stolen bases. So it's a systematic issue there. Just looping back with the Mets. Dropping a little bit lower here as we continue down the price point. We've got some interesting decisions, and this is my favorite thing on Tuesdays and Thursdays is we have one Adam Scherer. Adam Ship My Money Scherer is writing the deep dive behind the paywall, and as you well know, he makes his hay diving into the Brooks baseball stats, the not just fan graphs. He gets into pitch movement, arm slot, batter side run, pitcher side run, all the fun stuff. He's going to be able to help us find out if we want to consider somebody like Touki Toussaint against the Mets. If we can believe Austin Gomber can go against that fearsome Brewers defense. If we think Mike Montgomery gets a nice matchup there against Pittsburgh. If Chris Stratton can reach back and get another complete game for us, I don't think that's going to happen. To spoil that story, I don't think that's going to happen. But he gets to dive in here for us on all the good stuff. At first blanch, do any of these names or situations pop out for you as we wrap up our first look at pitchers?
Yeah, I think Toussaint is kind of the interesting guy here for me. I know he was a high prospect for Atlanta coming up, was impressing in his first start against Boston, I believe. Kind of get into trouble later in that game in the fifth inning, but 6 strikeouts against the Red Sox. And I remember it was a full lineup as well. So run prevention has been a little bit of an issue, but 8 strikeouts against the Cardinals. He's got a decent swinging strike rate. Despite some really tough matchups in his starts. Arizona mixed in there, not the easiest of matchups either. Chase rate looks pretty good to me as well. I'm really excited to hear what Adam and Laffy and Josh all have to say as well, because he seems like someone that I could find myself playing a lot of against this Mets team that's just dead in the water right now.
All right, I'm just looking here at the wild card to see if there's anything we need to be aware of. So Oakland looks like they're good. So the Yankees have clinched. They most likely will end up with that number 1 wild card spot. Oakland is a game and a half behind them. The Rays are then 6.5 behind them. So I was just curious to see what was up with Oakland, because depending on what they do with their lineup, now they platoon their guys so often they get a lot of days off, but Mike Leake is someone you might take a second glance at for a cheaper pitcher, or if you're going to play the Tuesday late slate. If we look at the NL, the Brewers are comfortably ahead by 2 games. Now we got 6 games to go, but they're comfortably ahead of the Cardinals. And then the Rockies, again, we mentioned they're duking it out there with the Yankees. So that one is a little bit tighter. So I would expect the Brewers, the Cardinals, the Rockies, and the Dodgers to run full lineups out and not be screwing around. So as people go on a little 2-game win streak or losing streak, you'll want to pay attention to this through the weekend just to see if anything dramatically changes, because that's where you get much like you get we clinched last night, we're playing our AAA team because everybody's hungover. You can get we've been eliminated. We're giving the regulars a day off because they've earned it. So
for sure. Yeah. So definitely want to keep your eye out for funky lineups leading up to lock. We saw that today, Monday, a couple teams rolling out their C squads, and that's going to happen. So be ready to adjust. I know we said it on the strategy show. I'm sure the deeper dive guys said that same thing, but just be ready to adjust as these lineups come out. Emac, one guy, you mentioned Stratton already, but what do you think of him in San Francisco? Obviously, a great pitcher's park, a bunch of Padres righties. Like, I just can't get past the park and that price. And not even about the complete game that was a couple starts ago. Kind
Yeah,
of putting that one aside, like, what do you think of him
exactly.
here?
That was the phrase I was going to use. Well done, sir. So putting that aside, this will be his fourth start against the Padres. In the prior three, he's gone 16 innings, and he's averaging just over double-digit fantasy points on DraftKings, which is fine. And only one of them was worth the win, so we know it's not overly inflated. You know what? I'd be okay if he gets in that 12 to 15 point range as what seems like a pretty decent, realistic floor against that team in that ballpark. I also don't hate if we need to go super cheap and we take, oh boy, I'm going to say it, Robbie Erlin
Yeah.
on the other side. Because he gets that same environment. Jake, what are we going to do? We could just have all the hitters that we want.
Right. I mean, it makes sense. You target these great pitchers parks and great hitters parks for your pitchers and hitters. At the end of the season, there's so much uncertainty. We know for certain that AT&T is the most pitcher-friendly park in the MLB. So why not take a couple of guys against a couple of bad teams? And I'm not saying you have to play them in the same lineup together, but Erlin's 5,400. Like, you can do a ton worse than him if you're trying to get to a Scherzer or one of these top guys, like a Bueller, same thing. So I just think Erlin makes so much sense. He can throw 80-plus pitches, probably closer to 90 if things are going well. And I think as long as he avoids an early blow-up, you're going to see double-digit DK points from Erland. And I don't really see him having too many tough matchups with this putrid San Francisco lineup.
Yeah, and maybe, just maybe, if we luck out and take both these pitchers and they give up a combined 3 runs, one of them qualifies for the win and lets the bullpen take over. So there's a chance we could box the win. What do you say? 1 in 3 that we get it, maybe 1 in 4, just because who knows how deep these guys are going to go, and will their offenses score behind them?
Right, that's the problem. One of the teams has to score to get the win. So, I'd take a 1-1 game if it meant both these guys gave me 15. I think I would much rather have that than worry about the win. But there's not a ton of strikeout upside on either side, but the teams are just so bad, and the park is so big and just plays to even bad pitchers. Like, I don't know if Stratton's bad, but if he can throw a complete game shutout in AT&T, like a guy like Robbie Erlin can give you 15 to 18 DK points here.
I approve of this messaging.
All right, looks like EMAC has left the call, but we will continue to go here. Let's see here. Well, you know what? We'll just keep going as I try to get him back. Oh wait, he just messaged me now. My computer glitched. I think that's about it. Not really any interest in Gaviglio or Matt Cook. In fact, you can see what I think of Matt Cook on the Spotlight Pitchers, Hitters, and Stacks article. We will have that out first thing in the morning. We will have Osmo's rankings, ownership projections, the strategy video with Josh and myself, the process show with Laffy and Josh, the From A to B with Andrew Barron and Ben Raza. What else do we have? Deep dive article that will be Adams, I believe, and then the deeper dive show live before lock with Josh and Chris. So all that coming out. We will also have Week 4 NFL coming out very soon as well. Sign up for Fantasy Cruncher, the Osmo version. Go to the sign up tab. And thanks for joining us, guys. Hope to see you back soon.